Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 85 of Get Out of Rap. I'm joined by someone that I've come to call my Svengali, my Yoda. It's Lee Houghton of Get Knowledge. Hi, Lee.
How are you, Martin? Thank you very much for that intro. And
It,
in fact, actually, congrats on episode 85. You've not aged a single bit in 85 episodes.
I haven't. I haven't. You're being very nice because I absolutely have. And I could have gone on with that introduction for far longer. Um, this year has been a year where I think we've spoken pretty much once a week, and it's the power of community, right? The power of something I know you're very passionate about, which is connection. I am very, and is today Thanksgiving? I know we're
Uh,
getting a bit
it,
American, but
yeah, it's around this. I've seen a few posts about it, so and that's what how I gauge what time of year it
yeah,
is. So yeah, it could
yeah.
be.
And I'm very thankful of the connection we made and the friendship we've established, because you have been a font of knowledge all year for me and a real support. So thank you very much, mate.
No, honestly, in fact, it's been completely two-way, Martin. I've got so much from our relationship so far. I can't wait to meet you in person. So I think when I hold on, I might not let go.
Well, I'm a self-confessed hugger, and just to get this out of the way, it's been said to me a lot at conferences and things like that. I'm probably a lot shorter than you imagine, because that I've had some people just can't get over that. They're like, you're much shorter than I envisaged you to be, and I was like, okay, I can't do much about that, I'm
Yeah,
afraid. So,
something else we might have in common there. Then we're all
well,
right.
good hugging height, good.
Yeah, dead right,
Now,
dead right.
so for the uninitiated, because this isn't your first time on the podcast, but for those that haven't gone through that episode or want a reminder, I could wax lyrical about your expertise, but for the uninitiated, what is it that you do?
Yeah, thanks very much, Martin. So yeah, so Lee Houghton, co-founder of a company called Get Knowledge, and primarily we help leaders and change professionals deliver change more successfully. I always think that like 20 years ago and 15 years ago, everybody was searching for consultants who would tell them the answer. And they were given them a business target that they needed to improve and focus on that. And then 5 to 10 years ago, that's when customer experience became a thing, and people were focusing on customer satisfaction. And then now it's about like employee engagement and well-being and things. And I think all of these things link. So you satisfy your employees, you deliver a great customer experience, and then you'll achieve your business targets. But fundamentally, I believe that it all comes down to leadership behaviors. So the environments that people work in are created, whether leaders believe it or not, by themselves, by them, and those environments created from the thinking. So that's what we try to do. We try to help people think different, so they do different, and then achieve different primarily. So yeah, that's what we do. 3 years we've been going, and I absolutely love it.
I love that. I love that. It's the power of leadership, because I think anyone listening would have done exactly the same thing I did when you said that, and think about the environments where I thrived and the environments where I survived. The key denominator was how was the leader? How was the leadership?
Yeah.
Was it one that encouraged me, celebrated, found out about me and maximized strengths and all that kind of stuff, or was it one where you could have had the best employee sort of well-being structure? You could have had great benefits. In fact, I have worked in the past in places where every element was great, from an external looking in, of your pay and benefits, the building, the role itself, but it was actually not very enjoyable at all, because of the culture determined by the leadership. So yeah, it's a lovely topic, and I think it's one that absolutely resonates with the audience from Get Out of Rap. Kind of in a contact center world. How do you? I think one of the things that people will say when you join contact centers is you better be okay with change. Now, for you guys that Get Knowledge, change and your expertise in that area, Have you seen that kind of, has that increased in terms of people really wanting to understand it and how best to deliver it over the last few years?
So if I just pick on what you said at the start, when you were recapping what I just said, there was a study in America in 2018 that said that 65% of people would rather have a new boss than a pay rise, and I think that's a frightening figure,
Yeah.
and because the impact that our leaders have on us on a day-to-day basis is fundamental. We often view the culture of a business through how our leader treats us, as well, at whatever layer of, and that's all the way up. So a lot of businesses have cultural change programs and things, but the way that employees at every single layer will view it is through how the leader behaves and whether the leader actually changes. Over the last couple of years, I mean, we've been in a pandemic. It's been a huge challenge because people have been in survival mode, and then now the appetite to change properly. So it was like changing through necessity for the first part of the pandemic, where things needed to be quicker, smarter, better. People needed to be on the phones and deal with different forms of demand and stuff. And then now there is an appetite to change again, but doing it in the right way, which I think is a huge positive. But what people don't realize is, so it's all signed off at the board level and the senior leaders, but they don't realize that they've got to change themselves. It's for everybody's change, not just the people who work on the process. And I think that's still a huge gap, because a lot of leaders, and I'll just, a lot of leaders think that whatever has got them to that position is what will make them successful going forward. And that's true with some, because there are some really good leaders. But I think there's nothing better for a change initiative than a leader doing what they do to support the activity of everybody else. So I'm not sure whether that answered your question. I kind of took on a little bit of a tangent with it, but I think everybody needs to change. And what you said as well, that everybody being comfortable or becoming more comfortable with change is true. And I think that it's so important, but everybody's different as well. In fact, actually, I posted on LinkedIn earlier this morning, and I put a picture of them dot to dot things where like you go from number 1 to number 2, and then a picture miraculously appears. I think change is a lot like that. Sometimes you'll show a dot to dot picture to somebody, and they'll be able to tell what that image is, what the image is going to be. Some people might see something completely different than what the image might be. Some people need a first few dots joining, and some people need every single dot joining. And we make a lot of assumptions with change, and we go, right, okay, we want to get to here. This is our vision. This is our values. We want to achieve this. And that's like just putting a dot to dot picture up in front of some people will see it, some people won't see it. And I think the more dots we can connect for everybody, recognizing that everybody will see it differently based on their experience, based on the lens of their leader, is so important. So important.
I love that. I mean, there's a lot there that you've just gone through that I was just vigorously nodding. For those of you watching, you might notice I kept popping myself on mute. It's Hugo, my 10-week-old puppy, is snoring so loud. I'm really sorry if you hear it. It's not my wheezing. It is there's a puppy down there.
It's the effect I have, Martin. Honestly, I send dogs to sleep.
I need more of you talking then, if that's the case.
Yeah.
I really do. But I love what you said about kind of leaders needing to change as well, because I think I couldn't agree more. One of the things I'd say is I think having been or be a leader and being led, of course, like all of us, right, is by talking, as long as people know that you're trying to change something for the better, that could be about yourself or the environment around you, people give you leeway, people buy into that and allow you to not be brilliant at it from the word go. If you kind of like, look, I'm trying to change this about myself in terms of how I deal with you, people go, okay, yeah, great, thanks. So that there's a bit of vulnerability there. I mean, this is really personal preference I'm talking about now. But if I've got a leader who's saying to me, I recognize that I've got to make an improvement or a change. I'm trying to do it, but I'm a bit clunky with it to start with.
Yeah.
I'm all for that. I'm like, right, I'm backing you 100%. Don't worry. Keep trying. Keep trying. Yeah.
I think that's so important for a whole host of reasons. One, from the personal aspect and the vulnerability and showing that everybody's human. But we want to create environments where people feel comfortable to raise their hand and go, I've made a mistake. The word failure has got negative connotations. It needs to be reframed. It's positive because it's a learning opportunity, not something that's bad. And if we always chastise people, if we chastise people when we don't hit a target, when they make a mistake, when they're struggling with something or whatever, and then they're never going to raise their hand and go, I've done something wrong, or I don't know how to do this. They'll muddle through with it. I always remember when I started my career as a data input person in the public sector, I had a pile of work next to me that would just kept creeping up. It was all the difficult cases I didn't have the confidence to tell people about, because in my head I'm going, everybody else has had the same training as me. Nobody else is calling these things out. Why? They must be able to do these. I'll stay behind one day, or I'll find a way to get rid of them in some other means and stuff. And that's not the environment we want to create. We want to create an environment where people raise their hands, say that they've made a mistake, say that they need help and support, and then we can get through it together. And I think when we talk about a leader doing something different, what you've just articulated there about demonstrating that vulnerability, that's what we want them to do. So then it makes it acceptable for other people to do it. I think it's so important, so important.
I'm one of the coaches of my stepdaughter's under-13 football team, and we're on a particularly challenging run of results. Let's say I've had the parents and even my other better half saying, "Please just win on Saturday." But one of the mantras that I think is really important for the girls that I've shared with them is, you win or you learn. And it's just to try and get them to understand, of course, that they want to win. It's a competitive game. But there is something around looking at the game or looking at their endeavor, let's say, and not just kind of, because I think if you've won, you can often just overlook things that could actually make you better and enjoy the game even more. When we've all collectively lost a game and we're able to learn from it. And I think that's the key thing that we say to them in training is, let's learn from these two things that happened in the game. Yeah. And this and this and this. And it's let's hope Saturday it works.
Fingers crossed.
But it's that thing around like martial arts is another one. Even champions will tell you they're still learning, and it's okay to have defeats, far more in martial arts than it is in, say, boxing, for example. But again, there is always a process of learning, and most learning comes from when they have failed.
Yeah, completely. You made me think of something. I've got 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they have spelling tests every Friday. And so some of the evenings during the week, it's go on, Jack. What? Let's read the list out. Spell this for me. Spell that. And then India, spell this for me. Spell that for me. And invariably they get some right, they get some wrong, and stuff. And then I can guarantee they'll come home today and they might have got 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 8 out of 10. It's relevant what they've got. And if they've got, say, 9 out of 10, the wife will say, which one did you get wrong? And I want them to think, which 9 did you get right? And I think it's the balance, isn't it, between recognizing the actually you've got 90% right here, and rewarding and recognizing what's going well, but then also spending a little bit of time on the one that's wrong. And we focus so much in our working life on everything that's going wrong, not necessarily what's going right. And we want to have a balance between right and wrong, vulnerability, and creating this environment. So yeah, so I'm with you with the girls football team, because there'll be a lot that goes right. They would have listened to you in training, and they might have tried a pass that at this time didn't didn't pay off and might have scored a goal or whatever. I think, yeah, it's dealing with people, isn't it?
It's great. Do you know
Everyone's
what's
different.
what is it about human nature then that if you think about contact centers, I would hazard a guess that they're up there for in industry terms, in terms of most measures like KPIs. There's a million, right? And at all levels. So when I started on the phones, I was amazed, like people talking to me about like wrap up time, for example, but comfort breaks, how long I spoke, quality score, absolutely everything. So, and this has kind of always been something that, what is it when you're presented with a dashboard, invariably at every level, when you come to talk about performance, you might have a dashboard that actually says, do you know what? And the balance scorecards, and I get it. That's in case people say what you're talking about. But why is it that it is human nature to focus on those areas where we haven't got the right result, where we've gone right? And that's often where some people will start.
Yeah.
So you present this great balanced view that says, overall, you're doing a great job. Let's talk about the 35% of the areas that are not on target. Let's spend our hour together there and there alone. Why is that?
So I think it comes down to what we're saying right at the start. When I said 15, 20 years ago, consultants would work on targets and measures and things, and that's what we've believed is the way to improve, is going measure everything, and whatever gets measured, we can improve it because we can identify and stuff. And then we went a bit softer, didn't we? We started looking at the output, we started looking at the customers and how the customers were feeling and their experience, and then trusting and crossing our fingers and hoping that actually by delivering a great customer service, then the bottom line would improve. And then it's about the people. But we're in a transition, depending on different organizations. Some are still measuring everything, and some are now measuring far less. I think I watched something yesterday, a guy who'd worked in Tesla, and he says that in the Tesla handbook, that's not a handbook, you can work on whatever process you want, and all of it is really fluid and flexible, and they're just trusting that it'll happen, and everybody's got access to Elon and all of that stuff. So it comes down to, I think, because it's what we've always done, it comes down to a leader not having the confidence to trust completely, and that everybody will do the right thing. And our processes and systems don't necessarily make it easier to do the right thing as opposed to do the wrong thing. I think everywhere is different, but I think a lot of it is to do with history, our experience, and how we believe that we should lead to get better. And we're tasked with like doing things for cheaper and better and all of that stuff, when if we just connected the dots between employees, leaders, customers, I'm a big believer that nobody comes to work to do a bad job. We just don't necessarily help them do a good job. And that's this dot-to-dot thing. And the dot-to-dot picture should be a lot wider than it is sometimes. We have a dot-to-dot picture that's just for our own individual team. It's a different picture for maybe the sales department. And they're both two completely different pictures and competing against each other, when really they should be working towards one picture and joining the dots together, and then building the customers and building the leaders and building the employees and building the other departments and the supply chain. We're at different stages of that with everybody, but I think to answer your actual question at the start, I think it's because that's what we've always done, and we believe that if we measure it, then we can make it better. But I think we're measuring the wrong things, because we don't trust enough.
Would you say, I remember I took over some teams in a contact center, and this little incident led to me always being mindful of refreshing with your team what the KPIs are that you're looking at and measuring and talking about. Because if they don't galvanize progression, if they don't prompt some positive interventions, what's the point in them? It's just busy work, busy numbers. Now, most call centers will have wall boards or TVs up on the side of the wall, and so I took over this team. It's big big long floor. There's like 3 teams, and I thought I'll just walk through it and get to know the environment and speak to people. And as I was going through, there's some nice wallboards that were kind of showing on a loop the team's stats, right? So how we were doing. A lot of places, and not most, but some places will have it flashes because there's calls waiting and things like that. But we didn't have that. We just had pretty live, but a set of results on a carousel going around, and went through the building, sat with my team leaders, and said, "What do you think about these?" Then what? And they were like, "Oh yeah, everyone." And they were probably, because I was new, just thinking, "Oh, let's tell him the correct political answer or whatever."
Yeah.
And they went, "Oh yeah, these are this system. It gets a feed from our MI. Everyone looks at it and takes action and blah blah blah." And I was like, "All right, can I do stuff on there? Can I update stuff?" And they said, "Yeah, sure." Took me to this guy, showed me how to do it, got me this download. And then the next day, I just wrote, "The squirrels are coming" in big letters. And like that flashed up halfway through this carousel of MI. And I just made it live, left it. No one said anything, because that was part of the furniture.
Yep.
You know, no one looked at that. You would have thought, I was just thinking, is someone going to come over and go, "Why is it talking about squirrels? What's happened? Who are these squirrels? What's happening with these squirrels?"
Yeah.
And then I said
Love
to the
that.
team leaders, I said, "We've got to use these better. We've got to make it fresh, and we've got to keep reviewing what we're doing." And I think that's the same with a lot of the numbers that are generated, or a lot of the prompts that we get, or if they're not doing if they're not galvanizing you to take some sort of action, don't choose something else. Don't use them.
Yeah, completely agree. It's that it comes down to the intent or the purpose of why we're doing it. I was having a conversation. In fact, I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and they said that their senior managers, they do like Gemba walks, so like they walk the process. They go to the place where the work takes, where the work happens, and then they start speaking to people. I said, why did they do it? What prompts and what triggers? They go, "Oh well, I've got an improvement and operational excellence initiative that says that all leaders must walk the process and stuff." I said, "Yeah, but we need to try to understand what you want to try to get from it. Is it because a performance trigger has triggered it, and there's a particular issue or challenge that they need to support down on the floor, or not?" And they went, "Oh no, it's just a tick box. We said that they'll do 20 a month or whatever, every senior leader." And so yes, I think the intent is so important of what you're trying to achieve. And those visual management boards that you just mentioned there, I think one of the lean or one of the improvement things is about visual management. But I think things have moved on now. So yeah, yes, we need to, exactly like you say, is freshen it up and keep it real. But we've got other senses as well. So what things do we hear? What are the audible things that make us know whether things are going right and wrong? And how do we feel as well? And I think if you ask everybody, "Have you had a good day today?" they will give you different answers, because everybody's definition of a good day is different, and it might not be the same as the strategic direction and the annual plan, and it's measures cascaded, which means you've got to answer every single call within X number, or have it for X length of time, or get a 9 out of 10 on that. That might not be different for a good day. For other people might be, "Yeah, I've helped people the best I can," or "Yeah, I'm empowered to be able to do something." I think only by asking everybody, "What is a good day to you?" can you then point everybody into the same direction. So for one person, it might be helping as many people, but how can you get that person to then relate to the company and strategic direction? And I'm a big fan of personalization, and you can't personalize everything. You can't get every employee to feed into everything, or else it just becomes unmanageable. But there'll be certain themes that if you ask everybody on the first line, go, what's a good day for you? And then group them together. And then next line, what's a good day for you? And group them together. Everybody will want to succeed. Nobody goes to work to do a bad job purposefully. And what is that purposefulness? And how can you make it point in the direction that we want everybody to travel? So yeah, I think there's so much in it, but we try to treat everybody the same, and I guess not everybody is the same at all, because everybody's got different experiences.
I love that. And it kind of points me in the direction of don't make assumptions. So I ran a outbound sales team for a while, and because I liked this type of environment, this is what I created. Was, it's very stereotypical, but it was high fives, lots of games, lots of fun, quite loud, and the company I was in had access to like an organizational psychologist who came in and took our team based on their sales results, sat down and did some in-depth interviews with high performers and low performers. And the high performers, the vast majority of them hated the high fives, the games, the public recognition, because they felt like it cheapened what they did as a profession. And what it led to us doing was create, like, in trains, there's I'm pretty sure they still do, have like a quiet zone.
Yeah.
So we created part of the call center that was a quiet zone. And for those guys in there, it was, we tailored our incentives, the environment, and how we interacted with them and celebrated success based on what they told us. To your point, a good day for them looked like come in, do a great job, get quietly recognized for it, but more from the customer point of view, that they didn't need like, well done, you've won a toy.
Yeah.
They didn't need a voucher. It was just work with me as a professional, talk to me about my progression, talk to me more scientifically about how I can get better still, and just add a level of professionalism on there. Don't get me wrong, we still had like the wacky warehouse zone, where people did want to play games and turn everything like at the early part of gamification, I'd say. But it stuck with me, that did, around, like you've just said, understand what a good day looks like for your team, because you'll be surprised.
Yeah, I love that as well, because my mind has just gone. If you created that environment where you had like 2 or 3 separate and allowed people to come and sit wherever they wanted on a given day, because something might have happened where actually I just want a quiet day today, or I've got a lot of work to do today, so I just want that quiet zone, or actually I want to have a bit of a laugh and a joke, and I need people around me. I think that would be an amazing place to work if you give people that ability to go and sit where there's a book by a guy called Nigel Risner, who calls himself the chief zookeeper, and we use this as there's like all sorts of disc profiling and stuff, but it's just 9 questions that allows you to understand which animal you are, and I think this perfectly articulates what we're trying to talk about. There's 4 animals. There's an elephant, a monkey, a lion, and a dolphin, and at the start of every engagement we give this 9-question survey out, and we let them. You're a monkey, by the way, Martin. I'm a monkey as well, which I think is partly why we get on so much, because so monkeys are creative, they're fun, it's all jazz hands and stuff like that. They like to have a bit of a laugh. Elephants are those people that are over prepared for things. They'll take 2 pens and a notepad into everything, and the monkey will be the person that's borrowing the pad and a piece of paper and a pen from an elephant. And then there's the lion who just wants the key bits of information now, and just tell me what's important, and then we'll move on. And then the dolphins are like, how are you feeling, Martin? Are you all right? And it's all about the people element of it. And we communicate in a way that's natural to ourselves and our own animal instinct. So typically I communicate like a monkey, because I've got to appreciate
that.
Yeah. I don't know why I did that. Well, this is recorded, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to be my favorite little clip.
and typically we communicate to others like we like to be communicated to ourselves. We've got to appreciate that actually we've got elephants in front of us, we've got monkeys in front of us, we've got dolphins in front of us, we've got lions in front of us, we've got hybrid people, and all of these people in front of us. So we've got to give a little bit to everybody if you want to have a successful presentation. And it's exactly the same when you're leading a team. You will have people that want to know all of the detail behind everything and the reasons. You will have people who just want to know what I need to do and when I need to do it. You'll have people that want to have the wacky warehouse place and have a bit of a high five and a laugh and the odd joke and stuff. And then you'll have people who go, it's what about the people, and what's the people element of it? And I think by understanding whatever your chosen tool is to understand the makeup of your team, and then layering on that top of that what makes a good day, and then doing something different yourself as a leader, I think that's probably the place to start this whole change thing. Really, it starts with yourself. And then starts with your ability to understand that everybody is an individual.
I love that. And it kind of, now in my mind, I've got this image of when you're communicating to lots of different animals that need different things. And it's like you say, it's not just visual, is it?
Correct. Yeah, it's not. It's about what they hear, the words that you use, and it's about how they feel. And we're trying to make everybody feel something. It's the reason why I went on comedy courses, because I believe comedians make you feel something far quicker than anybody else. And I think if you as a leader can make your people or help your people feel something towards the destination that you want to get to, it doesn't matter what metrics you use fundamentally, because you'll all be working and doing what you can to make today better than yesterday. And I'm not saying we ditch all measures at all. We do need to measure some things. But maybe just not as much as what we are measuring. Trust people a bit.
I love that. You went on a comedy course.
Yeah, yeah. I know it doesn't show, does it? I know. I've been on two.
Two of 20.
Yeah.
No, tell me about that then.
So it was a gift. I've always wanted to try my hand at stand up because I like it. And I want people to feel something. So I deliver change, as we've said, and what we've spoke about. And I think comedians help you feel something far quicker and at this roller coaster. And I wanted to see whether there was an art to it, and there is completely an art to it. It's not just about the jokes and whether you've got jokes. It's like, in fact, do you know, like a nativity play? So it's like nearly Christmas time, and children's nativity plays will be happening up and down the country, and they are the worst singing, the dodgiest outfits, ropey storyline, all of that. But at the end of it, you'll turn around and look at the audience, floods of tears, rapturous rounds of applause. That's the secret of comedy. That's the secret of people leadership. That's the secret of change, because they've got a level of connection that's so strong that it doesn't matter about the material, doesn't matter about the performance, because the connection is so strong. And that's what the guy said to us at the start of the comedy course. He said, "What's the most important thing in comedy?" And we all shouted, "Jokes!" And he said, "No, that's material. That's the third most important thing." And when we lead people or change, we lead with our material, we lead with our tools, our techniques, our methodologies and stuff, and we shouldn't. He said the second most important thing in comedy is your performance. He said in comedy there's only two lines, there's a setup and a punchline, and if you vary your attitude between the two, you'll make it easier for your audience to know when to laugh. And it's like we just spoke about with the animal thing as well. Vary your performance dependent upon the animal that's in front of you, because that'll then resonate, the message will resonate with them. But he said the most important thing in comedy is connection. And it is about understanding that actually there's people in front of you, and how much of a connection have they got with you, how much of a connection have they got with the direction and the destination. And to articulate the point, he said, in fact, actually, Martin, who's your favorite comedian?
I'd say one that I watched this TikTok about 50 times in a row yesterday. It's a podcast called The Wolf and the Owl, and it's Ramesh Ranganathan, and I don't know his surname, but his first name's Tommy. But I'll go Ramesh, I think.
Yeah, perfect. Right. Perfect. So if you went to watch Ramesh, right, so you just pay 25 quid out of your own pocket. You've got like seats at a Ramesh gig, and you turn up and you sat down, you and the missus sat there. What are you thinking to yourself?
It's going to be great.
Yes. Yeah, perfect. Because you know who he is. You know the type of material he's got. You know that he makes you laugh. And so it is going to be great. And then if you went to like a comedy store where you've got like 3 or 4 comedians who you've never heard of, but it's in a comedy store, you're sat next to your missus, and what you're thinking then before it starts.
That's a really good one, because actually it's apt. Where I play football, there are posters up of a comedy night. And I think, to answer your question, I'd be open-minded. And again, it's about not jumping to assumptions, but they had some pictures of the comedians and like a one-liner next to them.
Yeah.
And some of those were attributed to other comedians that you might know, like Johnny Vegas talked about these 2 of the comedians. And already in my mind, I was thinking, well, I like acts 4 and 6.
Yeah.
Not so sure about, and I have no idea. It's
Correct.
mental.
Correct, because you've not got that level of connection. They're trying to build connection with you by putting famous comedians who you might resonate and relate to go, actually, well, that guy's going to be funny because he said that about him. So they're trying to build connection. So if they build connection, then you're going to buy a ticket, because they go, oh, Johnny Vegas, I love Johnny Vegas, and he's saying that these are brilliant, so I must like it. It's like I went to watch a few years ago now at Chorley Little Theatre. Do you know that Ian Sterling, the voice of Love Island?
Yes.
And he came out onto stage, and this was like a season 1 of Love Island. I didn't know who he was, I've only started recently to know who he is. But anyway, so he came out and he said, oh, I left Chorley train station. I walked down Market Street, and I had Greggs on this side, and I had Argos on this side and stuff, and then something funny happened, and we all laughed. But as he was telling the story, I was going, I bloody know that street that he's walking down. I know exactly where he is. Oh, that's funny, that is, because that happened, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then I watched a recording of him doing the same set at another place, and he used exactly the same joke, but he didn't talk about getting out at Chorley. He talked about getting out at whatever other, where that one was as well, because in his opening thing, he was trying to build connection with the people that are in front of him by telling a joke about their town, so that they were on the journey with him. And that is so important in leading people, when delivering change, when everything that we're doing. That's why I wanted to learn about comedy, and that's my big lesson from it, actually, that it is all about connection.
Was it nerve-wracking?
Learning about it, no. Performing it, yes. So in fact, actually, I'll tell you this. So at the end of every comedy course, you get to do a graduation gig in front of friends and family. And also the friends and family of everybody else. So it's a really friendly, supportive group. It's like a nativity play. So irrelevant of they know when they should laugh, because you've just delivered a punchline and you've paused to accept the laughter. So they will laugh a little bit easier, right? And so I did my first 2 gigs, and then I thought, right, I can do this proper. So I entered Beat the Frog at the Frog and Bucket in Manchester. People didn't laugh when I thought they was going to laugh. But that was another lesson about level of connection, because none of them knew me. I didn't know any of them. So it was just I was just a balls and northern bloke testing out some material with an audience they didn't know, and crossing his fingers and hoping that they found the same things. And then I had a conversation with a compere straight after, and we were having a little bit of a laugh and joke, and because he was like, we were bantering with each other, people laughed more at that than they did my actual set.
Yeah.
Because he knew the audience, and we could riff off each other a little bit. So yeah, it's connection is key in everything that we do, I think, Martin.
Fair play to you, though. Was it? I just feel nervous thinking about that, standing up in front. I mean, especially a crowd in Manchester. Wow.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's always good to try new things. I've not put my comedy career to bed yet. I do want to give it a whirl just because I don't like not doing something proper, and I feel like I've not done it proper yet. I'd love, right, to do so I do quite a bit of speaking about change and stuff, and different change functions, and I want to try to write and we've said just before we hit record, actually, I've written or rewritten the words to Away in a Manger, which is a bit of a parody of Away in a Manger, but for Go Away Change Manager, in my head and in a Charlie accent. It fits perfectly. And I think I would love to find a keynote speech that has a right balance of emotion and connection and laughter and a bit of a journey to take people on. I think that would be amazing, and that's what I'm working towards. That's another reason why I wanted to do it.
I love that. Well, I was saying about that clip from that podcast that I saw on TikTok.
Yeah.
I went into because I was just watching it over and over and over again, and it was just making me laugh so much. But then I went into the comments, and I was reassured that people had written, "I've watched this 50 times in a row." Because again, it is that level of connection, isn't it? You could use a line from this poster that I really liked. One of the ones, I can't remember her name though, so I don't know how effective it is, but the line was really good, which was, watch her now before she becomes famous. And it was like basically saying she's really good.
Yeah.
Watch her now, and then you'll be able to say, I saw her at Boundary Park Sports Club. So I can say that I knew you before you were famous. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I was thinking, and I know you now you are famous. It doesn't quite work the same, but yeah.
Legend in his own lunchtime,
Yeah.
as somebody said.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, no, dead right. Would you ever? What's the further? What would you like to do that you've not done?
Great question. Just actually feeling how nervous I felt then about what you said about because I've done speaking. I did one last Tuesday, and I've realised I'm best when I don't follow any kind of. I don't follow if there's slides that I'm presenting. I'm better if I don't know. I can just get up there and talk, and they're nice, relevant background information.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I did it was at the British Library, and I came off and I said to my colleagues, I went, "Oh, I thought that went well," because loads of people were laughing. And one of my colleagues said, "Yeah, I'm not sure if that's that's not the right gauge." Yeah, it was funny, but I don't think you were booked, or our company want you to necessarily just be funny.
Yeah.
So I think I would like to I'd certainly like to go on a course like that. And I think, do you know what? I don't regret anything, and I hope the podcast helps with this, but I would love to have had this kind of desire to feel uncomfortable and to be new at stuff earlier on in both my career and my life. Don't get me wrong, I was very happy, but I kind of stuck to. I love football and just played football and went out with my friends and I had a family young. But now it's kind of like, right, what can I do when I'm going to be brand new at it? And that's that. I think it's the chasing, feeling uncomfortable. So it's like doing this podcast, and people say to me, in fact, I spoke to people this week, and they were potential. They wanted to come on as guests, but they were like, "Oh, I'd be so nervous." You, and they would say, "You're not nervous, obviously." And I said, "No, I am." And I think that's the kind of that addiction to feeling uncomfortable. So I would want to do that course. I've got hundreds of things I would want to do. I think that the girls keep trying to get me to. I've got a fear of heights, and the girls keep saying that we need to do Go Ape, and I've gone from going no to yeah, we absolutely must.
Yeah.
Don't go on a day that I'm going, because they'll have to call the fire brigade. I'm going to be up a tree, holding onto the tree, crying for my mum.
So has there been a moment that because now you like being uncomfortable, and before you didn't like being uncomfortable? Is that something that you've learned, or is there a trigger that's created that?
From a work point of view, it was working in Istanbul, going to still quite not. It was my first step into senior leadership. So I'd only just made into senior leadership, and then it was in a completely different culture, country, language, everything, and that was sink or swim every day, because every day, to start with at least, was terrifying.
Yeah.
Fear of failure was massive. Massively started to doubt myself, but then it helped me master, like a rodeo, master that feeling of being uncomfortable and going, okay, like I can, there's elements of this I can do. I'm going to hang on, and go, what, right. When you're forced into it, you uncover how best to use your strengths. I found, first of all, which was what was I good at in that situation? I was good at managing to establish relationships with people that I couldn't even communicate with, and getting to, like you say, connection, right? Connecting with people, and then after that, I think after that experience, which in the end was about 2 and a bit years, um, I never wanted to feel comfortable again, if that makes sense. Makes
Yeah,
sense. A bit
yeah.
strange, but
No, I don't think it is. I don't know if I've told you this, but I used to DJ, and I remember like my very first gig. I was a 18-year-old lad. It was a girl's 21st birthday party. Died and gone to heaven, and all of this. And I was like, me and my roadie was set up on stage, and we had the speakers up and the CD players and everything, and I played my intro music, and I'd gone through in my head everything I was going to say, like blah blah blah, welcome to blah blah blah, and something happened. I had the microphone in my hand, and I stood at the side of the stage, and I hid behind the speaker to do my intro because I'd taken it so far, but then that final step I couldn't do it. So I imagine then, like the people that was there watching, going, "Is this a recorded introduction? There's nobody on stage." I was going, but it was a shy 18-year-old lad hid behind, and I didn't want to feel like that again. So then my next one, I forced myself out because I thought, oh my God, this is horrendous. This is, and like 2 or 3 songs into the night, and then I was better on, and I could do it. And I think there is something in having that reason to try that thing now, so that there's a point where you kind of go and you can't turn back. Yeah, so yeah, you just sparked that memory you did when
I
you were
love that
telling the
though.
Istanbul story.
I love that because it's that, and it does go right back to what we were talking about. Like, technically, you'd say that first one, you weren't happy with what you did, right?
Yeah,
So you didn't feel like you won, but it galvanized you to next time step out and do
yeah,
it. Where and that's just, isn't that what it's all about? Is just kind of this progression, but enjoying the journey, enjoying the process. There is no end result. There's no, um, even if we go back to football, we could win on Saturday and then lose next Saturday. What it's really about is the connections the girls have with each other as teammates,
yeah,
and enjoying football, or whatever it is you're doing.
yeah.
I how or when will the Christmas single be available?
So between you and I am going to be recording it on Monday. I mean, it sounds very grand, doesn't it? But it's not. It's me and a guy with a camera. So yeah, and then fingers crossed by the 4th. So my next newsletter on LinkedIn, I'm hoping to have a link to YouTube for it. So 10 days time, ideally, I would like to turn it around.
I love that.
But we'll see. We'll see. If not this Christmas, definitely next Christmas.
No, it's got to be Christmas #1.
Well, I mean, it is very niche, isn't it? Talking about a change manager parody to the tune of "Away in a Manger." It's a little bit niche. I'm not sure whether there's a huge market for it, but we'll give it a whirl.
You couldn't get more niche if you tried.
No, no, no. I told my business partner what I was doing, and I sang it to him. And his first reaction, I was thinking he was going to say, "Oh yeah, no, this is a great idea. Let's do it." His first reaction was, "Do you think you could get a primary school choir to sing it?" I was like, "What was wrong with my singing?" But yeah, so
Have you
it's
got
not
a good voice?
no. No, so it's going to be quite it's going to be quite tongue in cheek as opposed to perfectly singing. There's nothing I can do about my voice, is there? Um, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
This is why, and now people must be able to understand. This is why I like to talk to you every week, because it's just a magical mystery tour of stuff, helpful, thought-provoking, often silly stuff. I mean, I don't care if anyone else hasn't. Yeah, of course I do, but I've learnt loads again. This is why Lee is my sort of Chorley Yoda.
Maybe that's what it'll say on my comedy poster. The famous Martin Teasdale said, "My Charlie Yoda." Yeah,
My Chorley Yoda. Yeah. Lee, thanks very much, because we've kind of done this just off the cuff, but it's because you are a consummate pro. You absolutely know your stuff, and I can't wait for the Christmas single.
Yeah, no, Mr. T, it's been an absolute pleasure to, like I said, to get to know you for all of these weeks and months, and long may it continue. So thank you for everything.
No, thank you, buddy.
See you soon.